Thanksgiving, everyone. It doesn't feel like Thanksgiving, does it? Not only the weather that we've had this weekend in Buffalo, which has been relatively nice and warm, but just the state that we're in as a country and an area. If you're not from the Buffalo area, we just got put into the governor-ordered orange zone, which means a whole bunch of new things got shut down again on Friday. And so we're kind of back in that funk, right? And it's not an easy place to be in anytime, but going into the holidays, it's probably feeling a little bit harder than usual, right? For some of us, we've already got our Christmas decorations up. We are so ready for the holidays. I'm totally doing that today after church. But for some of us, we're coming into this week kind of grieving. Like we can't travel like we usually do. We can't have family over like we usually do. Some of you may even have to be alone on Thanksgiving Day. And that's a very real thing to feel. And it's okay to grieve. But I've been asking God, what do you want to say in this time? And I've been mulling over different ideas in my head, and then this morning, honestly, God gave me something that I was like, really, God, this is what you want me to say? So you guys have to bear with me today. It did not come from me, because I would never say this stuff, but I think it's an illustration of something He wants some of us to hear. So Mike and I, we don't have kids, but we have 2 dogs. And one of them is a 5-month-old Shih Tzu named Tywin. He's adorable. If I had known God was going to have me talk about him, I would have put a picture up for you. But he's this little nugget of energy. He is total puppy, running everywhere. Our living room looks like we have 5 toddlers because we have toys all over the place. Thankfully, he's not a big chewer or our stuff would be destroyed. But one of his biggest faults right now, and this is on us, is that he still poops inside. And not only does he poop inside, but then he decides to eat it. And I was like, God, really? This is what you want me to talk about? Okay. So this morning, I'm getting ready, and I'm trying to think through what I'm doing on the drums, and I'm thinking through this, and I'm smelling it. And I was like, I don't have time right now, and I know what he's doing. I know what he's doing. And then God woke me up for a second, because we have food for him. He's not a starving dog. We have plenty of food. We have treats. He gets love. He has all the activity he could ever want because he's got his little brother and they play constantly. And yet, he goes for his poop. There are some of us in this room, there are some of us online that keep going for our poop. God's like, I got food for you to get you through this time. It's called my word. I have love for you. It's called sitting in my presence. And yet you decide to dwell in your own poop instead. And for some of you, I was planning to start funny, and then God said that, and I was like, okay, there's somebody that needs to hear that today. So what I'm hoping is, as we talk about holy moments, we're going to start to shove the poop aside, keep it outside where it's intended to be, and we're going to have a little bit more of his love, his presence, his food today to get us through this crazy period that we're in. So if it's okay, let me just pray for us, all of us, because, Father, we need you. This is a rough time, God, and I know that you know that. You saw it coming. You knew that we were going to have more shutdowns now. But, Lord, your love, your sustenance, who you are goes so far beyond that. And we just need you to open our eyes today. So, Lord, I'm just asking for your Holy Spirit to come over every person that's watching. We already prayed over all the homes for people sitting at home watching today. We've prayed for you. God, cover them with your hand. And just meet with us. Help us to understand. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, can you forgive me? Are we okay? Okay, I'm moving on. So we've talked over the past 6 weeks about the vision that God gave to our senior staff back in January at our senior staff retreat. That retreat was really, really cool. I know Pat kind of talked about it a little bit in week 1. But when we all got together, that was the first senior staff retreat that I'd been on that had been an overnight thing. And when you meet with people overnight and you go on trips and things, relationships change a little bit. You get to see people in their element. And so it was a neat experience to be with all these pastors and just see all of us eating breakfast together and who's making coffee first thing in the morning and all that stuff. But then when we got to work, we started with worship and just prayer, and God met us. And I started to understand that this was more than a work retreat. Like, we were experiencing a holy moment with God. And we knew it because the ideas that were coming to all of us were unified. Like, how often does that happen? You get 10 people in a room and we're all coming up with the same thing. And then we met with Wayne Schmidt, our general superintendent for the Wesleyan denomination, over Zoom, and he was speaking the same stuff. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is confirmation. This is what we needed. So we knew what was happening in that space over those 3 days was bigger than us. And that's what holy moments tend to be. So let's define what a holy moment is for a second, because some of you are like, what are we even talking about? A holy moment is a space and time where you sometimes get a revelation from God. We see something, or we learn something more about Him. Sometimes we learn something more about us, or we just understand a situation better. Very often, it's followed by transformation. So when we're changed and you know you've been with God, that holy moment kind of defines the next section of your life. Now, they can be huge and they can be small, but either way, something in you leaves different. And you know you've been with God. That's how we felt that weekend. So I just want to give you a quick pop quiz, because back a number of years ago, I was actually a teacher at one point. So we're going to pop quiz you on the last 6 weeks of this series and see how well you do. So if you're at home, I want you to scream out whatever answers come to mind, and I'm going to pretend I hear you. It's awesome. But week 1, Pat outlined the sermon series all about immeasurably more. Now week 2, the pastor was Justin, and he gave us the illustration of a cup being filled with rice, and the worship team came out and was pouring rice into this cup, and it started to overflow. And his topic, if anybody remembers, it was resources. How when we pull all of our resources, our time, energy, talents, finances, into one big pot as a church body, it starts to overflow, and we have more to present to the world to bring them to Christ. Week 3, Pastor Matt, what was his illustration? He was holding dynamite. Dynamite, yes, sticks of dynamite. And he was talking about the development of leaders. How when he infuses, he lights our fire inside, dynamite explodes and it goes far beyond whoever's holding it, right? It impacts everything around it, and that's what leaders do. And so all of us are leaders. All of us need to keep developing other leaders under us, and then that's how our gospel spreads, the gospel message. Week 4, Pastor Sean, if you remember, he was standing in the middle of a box, and he was talking about making disciples. So often in our tactics, or even in just our faith, we put God in a box of how He wants to work in somebody's life, about whether or not He could actually work in somebody's life. And Sean was saying, let's break down the walls. God is so much bigger than that. He's going to make disciples one way or another. And then last week, Pastor Robin, you remember she walked out with a ceramic plate and talked about our friend Doris Whitwell. She was talking about fresh opportunities and how every day Doris Whitwell would come before God and just say, what is on my plate today? What do you have for me to do? What are the opportunities that I'm supposed to run toward? So all of those things are all about using God's vision that He's already given this church, using His power, His strength, His Holy Spirit to accomplish it, so that we are seeing God do immeasurably more than all we could ask or imagine for the glory of His kingdom. Amen? That's a pretty tall vision. So here's your bonus question. If you didn't do very well on the pop quiz, you get one more chance. At this point, can you recite our vision statement for the church? We're going to try together. We'll put it back up on the screen for you just in case. But our prayer is to see God unleash a Spirit-empowered movement through kingdom multiplication while experiencing the fullness of Jesus Christ in holy moments. So it's that last piece that I get to spend some time on today. Now, we defined what a holy moment is, and there are so many examples of holy moments in Scripture. So let's start with Moses, because we've been talking about the Israelites and Egypt and the Promised Land and all these things. Moses' first holy moment was with a burning bush. Do you remember the story? So he's in the desert. He sees this bush off to the side on fire. Now that may or may not be a weird sight to see, because in the desert I have to assume that things sometimes catch on fire, and it is what it is. But he stopped long enough and got close enough to recognize that the bush was not being consumed. That was a holy moment. So it was then that God said, all right, take off your shoes, take off your sandals, you're on holy ground. And then that holy moment was Moses' life assignment. That was a huge holy moment. That completely changed the direction of his life. But imagine if he had walked by that bush thinking, well, there's another bush. It's toast today. And he didn't stop and recognize the miracle that was happening inside of it. He could have completely missed that holy moment with God. And maybe he would have stayed just tending sheep in the desert for the rest of his life instead of fulfilling his major calling. So then we'll move forward, parting of the Red Sea. So this, obviously, holy moment, like blow your mind holy moment, but it was a corporate holy moment. So that's a nuance, too, that's different. Sometimes we think of holy moments just being personal, but when you're leading an entire group of people, God parts the waters so that they can get over, away from the Egyptians and everybody that's following them. And then corporately, they needed to decide that they were going to trust that water was going to stay where it was. God was really in charge as they marched across. And I saw pictures recently of the Red Sea. It was not skinny. Like, they were probably marching for a long time, and I think I would have been fearful. Like, okay, I see what's happening right now, but as soon as I step in, is that really going to stay? Is the water going to hold? Because we got a long way to go. That was a corporate holy moment where they were all in, because they had to be, and God did something miraculous. And lastly, for now, I think about the woman in Matthew chapter 9 who was bleeding. You probably remember that story too. She was bleeding for, I think, about 13 years. She'd seen all the doctors. Nothing was working to heal her. She must have been exhausted. She must have been lacking hope to the fullest extent. But she had heard about Jesus. She had heard about his power and what he was doing in other places, and she heard that he was coming. And so she decided, okay, this is my chance. If I can just touch his robe, maybe I'm going to get healed. And so she worked her way through the crowd, got up, reached out, touched it, knowing that that was a risky thing to do because somebody might see it. And Jesus, when he recognized that the power left him, he turned around and said, it was your faith that just healed you. So that was a powerful holy moment for her that completely changed her life. But what can we learn from these examples? Who are holy moments for? We talked about what it is, but who are they for? They can happen to anyone, and not just Christians. So if you think about the Samaritan woman at the well, she met with Jesus because he stopped for water. She was there at a weird time. She was not a believer. She did not know that Jesus was the Messiah and he was standing right in front of her. But she let him talk. She let him help her see that he knew her. And that moment changed her life because she started to believe. And so we've all had a holy moment. Those of us that are saved, our first holy moment was probably our salvation moment, where God chased us down before we were even his, officially his. And he met with us in a way that changed the course of our life forever. So praise God for those holy moments. Where can holy moments happen? Anywhere. They can happen in your car. They can happen in the gym. They can happen at work. They can happen in your bedroom. They can happen in a dream. We just have to pay attention. When can they happen? Anytime we're listening. That's the bottom line. In all of these situations, if the people involved hadn't stopped and listened, they would have missed it. And I think that's God's biggest message to all of us today. If we stop being so busy, and I'm 100% guilty of this, if we stop thinking that our to-do list is too big and we don't have time. If we stop recognizing that God is in control of everything and every step we take, every word we speak could be worked out through him, we can ask him for all of it. We can ask him what clothes to put on, because you never know what piece of clothing is going to do something for somebody else that day. I don't know. There's so many ways, but everything is under God's control. And if we look at it that way and we start seeing it and recognizing his voice, all of a sudden we have a string of holy moment after holy moment, because God is working, God is using us, God is changing us, and we're getting to know his voice better. And how do holy moments happen? There's really no formula that I could find. I did a lot of studying on different stories, and every one is different. Sometimes it's in a whisper. Sometimes it's through scripture. Something will just hit us in the head. It can be audible at times. It can be a burning bush experience. It could be a healing. Sometimes it's just through a song that just breaks us because God is doing something. We've probably had those moments. Pentecost was another corporate holy moment example in chapter 2 of Acts. The disciples were all there. They were in town for a festival, and so Jews from everywhere were all over the place. And the disciples got hit with the Holy Spirit. They started speaking different languages that the other people around them could understand, because, again, they were from all over the place for a big festival. They'd come into the city. And that's an example. Like, obviously, that was a holy moment. They couldn't have manufactured that. God descended. He did what he did. And it changed the life, because what it did is brought other believers into the family. Because there was no explanation. That had never happened before. That exact kind of thing has never happened again, to my knowledge. So we can't put bars, we can't put God in a box of how he wants to speak. That was an outpouring of the Holy Spirit in a way that had never been seen. But why does God care? Like, why does he want holy moments with us? Because he loves us. God wants to have these moments with us to help us understand, again, who he is, how much he loves us. And then hopefully we're going to allow that understanding to change us and change the world. So Ephesians chapter 3, 14 through 19 is something that we've been talking about for these last 6 weeks. So I want to read it for you one more time. But Father, I just pray that you would open our ears even more. Bring out the new things that you want us to understand in this reading. For this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. That last little piece is what I get to spend some time on. That you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. So, like any good preacher, ministry student, I dug into that a little bit. Fullness. Like, what is God's fullness? What does that even mean? We can say it a million times, but that doesn't give me context for his fullness. Well, sometimes you're told, go back to the original writing of Scripture. So I did that. Paul was writing to the church in Ephesus, which was a Greek port city. So they were right on the water. They were very influential. Paul decided to spend a lot of time ministering there, because if the word took root there, chances are it would get out to many other countries. So he spent about 3 years there. So the Greek word, because he was speaking to Greeks, the Greek word was originally used. Fullness was pleroma. Pleroma means abundance or completeness. So if we kind of insert those words into the phrase, that you may be filled to the measure of all the abundance of God. Like, that feels really good, doesn't it? Lord, let me be filled with your abundance, because his resources are endless. His love for people is endless. His creativity is endless. that you may be filled to the measure of all the completeness of God. Completeness of God. Well, that brought me to Jesus, because Jesus was the model of completeness in a human form, right? So what does that look like, to have all the completeness of God? Well, if we look at Jesus, he went through terrible things, but he never sinned. He never doubted God. He never complained. He never ran from what was being put in front of him. His life was anything but easy, but he did everything with grace and confidence and integrity, because he knew the source of it all was the Father. And I was just thinking about that in the context of where we are today. Like, so many of us are feeling kind of beaten down. And I've been there the last few weeks for me, and a lot of scenarios have been really, really difficult. And I felt beat down, like for real, like the kind of beat down, like, can I just like go home and crawl in my bed and stay there for 2 days, and then maybe things will get better when I come out? Has any of you felt that way lately? But in Jesus' situation, he never ran. He walked with integrity. He walked with confidence through all of that stuff that he went through, because he knew that the strength, the energy, the time, the resources, the words, the wisdom, none of it was coming from him in those moments. It was coming from the Father. And that's where our security lies. A lot of you know that I'm an exerciser. That's no secret. And I really love hard workouts. Like, I'm one of those weirdos. The harder, the better. Make me cry a little bit. I want to be sore for 5 days because I know that means I did something really great. So I was actually in the gym on Wednesday, which was sadly the last day I got to go, and then the gyms are closed again. And I was like, God, why? I just got back in my routine. But on Wednesday, I was like patting myself on the back because I took a really hard boot camp class on Tuesday morning. And I knew before I even left that class that I was going to be really sore. And so by Wednesday and Thursday, like, I couldn't even sit and stand like a normal person. I looked like I needed like a cane and some help or something. So that's how sore I was. And I was like on Wednesday praising, like, I celebrate how sore I am, because that means that I tore muscles up. And if I do things right in recovery, then I'm going to get stronger, and that's the goal, right? And God hit me as I'm working out in the gym. Why don't you do that with the pain in your life? Oh, shoot. Why don't you celebrate the pain in your life like Paul says to do? Perseverance produces character, you know? Suffering through all of it produces character. It produces all of these long-term prizes. And I do that when I exercise because I understand the science behind it, but I don't do it in life. And maybe it's because I don't trust God completely, that everything in life is for a better purpose. And if I could just stop eating my own poop for a second and start looking at what's out there that's better, God's going to have his way, and he's going to be able to use that, because the way that I come through a hard workout and celebrate it, and it like fuels me for the rest of the day, even though I'm in pain as I walk around, God could be doing that in everything in my life. That was a small holy moment for me in the gym, where God just needed to kind of reorient. And he does that a lot. I've had big holy moments too. And I was just remembering, I think most of you probably know my story with Mike. He was sick for a while. He was in the hospital for about a month. And in that time period, most of the time I would go, work in the morning, go to the hospital in the evening, and then my parents' house was kind of on the way home. So very often I would stop at their house on the way back from the hospital every night just to like download what was happening, give them updates. And one particular day, I don't think I'll ever forget it, I think I'd been running on adrenaline for a few weeks at that point. You just keep going, you keep fighting, you do what you got to do. And as I sat and just downloaded to them what was happening, I just broke down. And it was like everything, the reality of our situation, the reality of how my life was going to change and how his life was changing and all that just hit me all at once, and I lost it. And it was right then, I heard God say in my spirit, are you going to trust me no matter how this ends up? Because at the time we didn't know. And something deep in me, and I praise God that he had worked a root system in me, because I don't think I could have done this on my own strength. But in my tears, I was like, I trust you. That was a huge holy moment, and I don't think it was because God needed my I trust you. I think I needed to hear myself say it, because that's what I could stand on then. I knew we'd had that conversation. So sometimes we need that small readjustment. We need that holy moment. We need him to meet us to just like realign our thinking. Sometimes we need a little bit more. And then sometimes, like that day for me, I needed a bucket. Like, God, come fill my bucket, because, man, I don't think I can do this anymore. But sometimes we'll come to God as if I was about to dip this cup in like a small jar of water. Like the water is all he's got to give. And it's okay, because I only need this much, God. But the water level dips a little bit. So I know that if I need more than that, like if I needed this much out of this bowl, well, that's going to dip the water a lot, God. And I probably don't deserve that. I've come to you 1,000,000 times. So-and-so down the street needs more. I don't want to keep bugging you. I know, I sound like I'm so annoying. You can't possibly be big enough to fix what I'm going through. I don't think we'd ever audibly say that to him, you're not big enough. But it shows in how we act. It shows in how we come to him or don't come to him. So my new intern, Leanne, was able to capture this concept in a video, so I just want you to see that for a second. So God's immeasurably more for us is that lake. We can go to him with a huge bucket 500 times, and it's not going to change the water level. 500 people could go to him all at once with a huge bucket, and it's not going to change the water level because God has more to give. But if we don't come to him expecting, we're not coming with the faith the size of a mustard seed that he's told us is what is required. So Pastor Pat asked you to get some paper ready. The worship team's going to start playing. And what I want to give to you, and just look at this as a gift. People at home, cut out the distractions. I know you're at home, and it's hard. Turn the volume up on your TV and even louder if you need to drown something out. But take this time to just meet with God for a minute. Because that's all he wants, and then he's going to download more to you. He's going to give you your next assignment. It might be a life-changing moment. It might be a reorientation. But whatever it is, it's going to produce transformation for today, and maybe for this week, and maybe for your life. But we have to stop and take time. So whatever comes to your mind, like when I sit down, we did this a year ago too. When I sit down with paper, I'm like, okay, God, what do you want to say? And sometimes I'll just write that. What do you want to say? That's what I did when I asked him, what do you want to say to these people? And he told me poop. So you never know what's going to come out. Don't judge it. Just write. Go back later and look at it. He might show you some things that you didn't see as you wrote.